Thank you very much, and don't forget, this video was made possible by my patrons on Patreon. Want to support me? The link is on the screen. Sincerely yours, VisualPony, and enjoy this audiobook. The Lunar Cypher, Chapter 22. Secrets. Keep it a secret. That's all Celestia wanted us to do. If we stayed out of the public eye, we could have our cake and eat it too. 1. Equestria would be assured that all was normal again, and Luna and I would be able to enjoy each other's company without panicking the populace. 1. Pinky's solution to that traditional problem of gluttony versus the artistry of the baker was to bake 2 cakes. One to look at and one to eat. Of course, she always ended up eating both cakes, so it wasn't a very good solution. I didn't much like the idea of layer of deception, but it incidentally provided a salve to my conscience, so I agreed, contingent on Luna's approval. I'm sure she will agree, Celestia said, smiling. It wasn't until I was halfway across the upper terrace on my way to the Tower of the Moon that I began to wonder if it wasn't the solution that Luna herself had suddenly suggested with her shadowy vanishing act. Families had some pretty sophisticated, non-verbal ways of communicating. Just ask my mom. I was 3/4 of the way across the terrace when I began to wonder if all the events of the past year hadn't turned out exactly as Celestia had planned. The bitter and hateful nightmare had still been a threat through the dream realm, even when she was unreachable within the wheel of the earth. Who else could have gone down there with a chance of bringing her out as anything other than a fully restored monster? Celestia had obviously hidden aboard Solar Flare, disguised as a normal pony. There was no way she could have reached us in time to rescue Luna otherwise. Had I really been too far into the collapsing portal for her magic to take hold of me, as she had told me? Or had she let me go, trusting that I would do pretty much what I had done? No, surely not. I paused and looked over the edge of the parapet towards Parliament Square. I couldn't help but reflect that every time my life showed any sort of stability or reliability, sudden drastic changes had overtaken me. When I grew complacent in my power and abilities, some new challenge would appear that would try me to my utmost. It felt a lot like the method the Red Queen had used to strengthen her ponies. Only personal. There was quite a party going on in the square. I could hear the music and singing from where I stood. Colored lanterns had been strung above the rubble, and balloons floated on long lines along the high street. It was a joyous celebration by a lot of happy and relieved ponies. I might be disturbed by her methods, but I couldn't argue with Celestia's results. I turned back towards the tower as a thin, waning crescent moon rose over the castle. It should have been a waxing quarter at this time of month, but allowances had to be made, I supposed. Alone, Celestia had ruled Equestria in peace or victory for 1,000 years. Though all the official histories said otherwise, she couldn't have managed that impressive feat by merely being the wise, motherly figure that was her public persona. Not many modern ponies know it, but griffins used to eat ponies. And the First Griffin War was partly the result of a famine in their homeland. Emperor Gustav certainly got a rude surprise when his armies swooped down on Canterlot, calling for the mild and weak Celestia to surrender her kingdom. Modern griffins blanch at the thought of eating any sapient species, and we all have Celestia to thank for that. So, why was I bothered by a necessary deception and one probably deserved death? Was it that it led me into even more deception? But it was for the good of Equestria, and the heroic tales of self-sacrifice that I loved as a filly might just as well be reframed as sacrificing one's overly strict morals. I shook myself out of my inner argument and went on. The captain of Luna's guard stood watch at the entrance to her tower. He braced as I approached, head and neck held in a stiff posture of respect as I walked up to the door. "Good evening, Captain Nightwing. The princess is expecting me." He gave me a brief, tight nod.
Her Majesty requests that, if you bear bad news, you would be so kind as to leave her to her own thoughts tonight.
I gave him a slight smile. "I know my way up." He relaxed just a bit and stepped to the side. As I passed by him, he said softly,
"Thank you, Princess."
I didn't ask what he was thanking me for. The two big onyx vases outside Luna's private chambers held large bouquets of asphodel and moonwort. Their heavy scent filled the hallway. I raised the silver crescent knocker and rapped lightly. "It's me!" I called out. The door swung inward, revealing the dimly lit chamber. Luna stood by the window that overlooked the city, her head turned toward me over her shoulder. She was leaning slightly forward and her near hind hoof was cocked at exactly the right angle. "Oh, 'tis good to hear thee laugh, Twilight," she said as she came to greet me. Our wings and forelegs wrapped and intertwined as I said, "And it's good to know you haven't lost your subtle and wicked sense of humor." We held each other for a while and then I said, "Our relationship has faced a lot of challenges, and there are certainly going to be many more in the future. Do you think it will matter if we add another one to the pile?" "As long as we bear the burden together, my love," Luna said softly, her lips brushing my neck. It wasn't so bad, really. So what if she was a mare? Love is love, isn't it? Can't a pony grow towards love with an act of will? After another moment, Luna spoke again. "I am the mare of the night, the princess of dark places, and the mistress of secrets. It will be no hardship to me to hide the truth, to play at disguises and deceptions with thee." "Oh, so you know what Celestia asked of me?" "I know her ways," Luna confirmed. "But what of thee? Will not the clandestine meetings be a burden? Wilt thou not feel discomfort when we go amongst our subjects disguised?" I chuckled. "It might be a relief to just be a normal pony every once in a while." Luna nodded. "Normal, but not ordinary. I will not let thee reduce thy beauty for the sake of dissemblement." That made me laugh again. "Is that a real word?" My somber, introspective mood was rapidly dissolving. "Wouldst thou doubt me? Oh, cruel and heartless lover! How canst thou be so calumniatorish?" I had an absolute fit of snorting laughter. "Okay, first thing tomorrow I'm buying a Middle Equish dictionary." "Fie! Reunited we are after a long and torturous absence, and thou thinkest of naught but reading? Maybe I canst change thy mind." That's when Luna's teasing took on a much more physical aspect. She stepped away from me and I felt the cool and silky flow of her magic as she shifted her shape. Before me stood a silver-grey unicorn stallion with an ebony mane and tail. He was luxuriously muscled, but lithe and supple instead of bulky. "Tell me, Twilight," she said in a baritone as rich as melted chocolate, "what do you read in my eyes?" Oh, stars and moon. Those half-lidded turquoise eyes held an invitation that was unmistakable. My throat, heart, and belly all competed to see which one could perform the most convoluted internal gymnastics. I said something brilliant like, "Yeah," and sat down hard. They aren't common or frequent, but there are times when I really wish I could turn off my brain for an hour or so, and that was one of them. Luna sensed my distress and became herself again in an instant. "Forgive me, I didst not intend." I held up a hoof and made a little squeaky noise in place of coherent speech. Then, after I had collected myself and cleared my throat, I said,
No, as it was... Wow. It's just that I think I'd like to take it a bit slow at first, if that's okay with you?
Of course, Twilight. Luna nodded earnestly.
Would you have preferred wings?
I managed not to make another dumb little squeak and said,
No, yes, maybe. I don't really know.
Slow then, Luna said, smiling gently.
We have all the time we could want now. Oh, right.
I gasped out.
Time! I arranged for a dinner party that's supposed to start in about half an hour. You should come. I mean, we should go. Together. Go together.
Thou art adorable when flustered, my love. She nibbled gently at one of my ears.
Stop that!
Luna tilted her head questioningly.
I mean, stop making me go all melty and goopy inside.
She chuckled and tossed her mane.
'Tis sweet revenge for all those times I looked upon thee with longing sense hope, my dear, brilliant, beautiful. Dinner!
I shouted in desperation.
Either we go down to dinner right now, or no pony's going to see the two of us for a month.
A slow, evil smile crept across Luna's face.
Dinner, for now,
she said. You invited Chrysalis? Applejack quietly hissed at me, trying not to lose sight of the Changeling Queen in exile, where she chatted with Jigsaw and Cesar Russia on the other side of the dining hall. The big table in the center of the room had been set, but the first course hadn't been served, and it was the little tables along the walls that held a large assortment of appetizers. Every pony orbited the dinner table, sampling and grazing. I briefly considered the best way to phrase it so that Applejack could emphasize with my motives, and then said, I've got some scores to settle, and as long as I've been away, I thought it would be best not to delay any longer. Does one of them scores involve the big buck getting her hide whopped? Applejack asked, with the beginnings of a grin.
I know you don't like her, but I really do owe her for the trouble I caused her.
Why?
Just watch her face. I'm sure you will enjoy it.
I left Applejack and walked around the big table, trading a few words with my friends who were mingling as they sampled the hors d'oeuvres set on silver trays around the periphery of the room. I passed Luna and Rarity, who stopped talking to each other and put on bright, innocent expressions as I passed by. Hellish intrigue, no doubt.
Your Majesty, Jigsaw, Sassy,
I said as I approached them. As far as I knew, all that Chrysalis ruled was a little part of the Blue Blood estate, a few score changelings, and a couple of shady businesses, but it was simple politeness to go along with her self-styled title.
Twy!
Jigsaw beamed and we exchanged hugs.
It's so good to see you back. I was worried sick, but I guess it's going to take a 20-ton tombstone to keep you down. I'm sure I could scrape up the bits to pay for one, if you find yourself short of cash.
Chrysalis offered. Cesar Russia chuckled.
It's good to see you too,
I replied to Jigsaw while ignoring Chrysalis's jab.
Do you think you could excuse us for a minute or two? State business.
Jigsaw glanced between Chrysalis and I with a frankly disbelieving expression and then said,
Sure thing, Twy. I'll be right over there if you need anything. Like bandages or burn cream,
Cesar Russia said out of the corner of her mouth as she went by. When they had trotted out of earshot, I turned to Chrysalis, who was frowning at me warily, and asked,
You haven't forgotten my promise, have you?
I glanced down at her legs. Sure enough, the holes were small and some were barely dimples. Chrysalis lifted her lip just enough to reveal the tip of one long incisor.
I don't expect you to honor it.
I wanted to say,
That's because you think I'm like you.
But I bit back the comment. Instead I said,
What I can do is offer you a couple of options, now that I know what you really want. What do you mean by that? I've told you what I want. You don't want to stay a changeling. As an alicorn, you could use your shapeshifting magic to be anything you wanted, even your current changeling body. You'd shed the curse in an instant if you weren't afraid of losing its other effect.
Chrysalis raised her chin as her eyes narrowed in anger. She sneered slightly as she asked,
What options? I can reinforce the curse. From recent experience, I'm pretty sure I can find a way to use the energy from the Wheel of the Earth to lock it onto you like a magic straitjacket.
You... Chrysalis struggled with her own face for a second and then gave up, settling into a pathetically hopeful expression.
Can you really do it?
I nodded.
You'll be able to be with Blue Blood all the time, but I'm pretty sure the technique will limit you in another important way.
Chrysalis's expression began to harden again.
Explain. The magic would have to be designed to keep you from changing. At all.
I heard Applejack snort as she suppressed a laugh from all the way across the room. She had been watching. At least some pony was enjoying the situation. I didn't find the Queen in Exile's shocked and enraged face quite as hilarious. Before Chrysalis could do something foolish, I went on.
Maybe you'll be able to use your Alicon magic to cast an illusion or glamour that will make you look different. But it won't be the true transformation you're used to.
I paused for a second as her face went through a dozen different expressions and finally settled on cold disdain.
I'm sorry, but your choice comes down to living apart from your friend for most of the time or losing your ability to change shape. But...
She was obviously thinking furiously.
If I allow the curse to be lifted and I become my old self, you could lock me into that body, couldn't you? Sorry, it won't work that way. I can only preserve what's already there. The curse itself is what's keeping you eternally young. You've got to choose one or the other.
She looked away from me and didn't reply for a long time. Just when I was thinking I ought to leave, she spoke again.
Or I could become mortal again.
She turned to look at me haughtily.
For him.
Just the fact that she was considering it impressed me deeply.
Believe it or not, I understand that and I sympathize. Let me know what you decide and I'll do my best to help you.
I couldn't read her expression or get any clue from her voice as to whether she was joking or not when she said,
I've had the opportunity to kill you several times and failed to take advantage of those situations. I really can't decide if that's a good thing or not.
I took that as a cue to leave. I trotted off, feeling a little bit ashamed of myself for being so blunt with Chrysalis. I wondered if the nightmare had left a trace of meanness in me along with her magic. Which was another thing I had to deal with.
But not tonight,
I told myself. Since Rarity had arranged the dinner with the palace staff, it was a bit more formal than I had intended. Little name cards had been set out at each place at the table. Luna was at the head, of course, and Chrysalis was at the foot, as befitted a visiting monarch. I was at Luna's right hoof and Cesarasha was in the respective position near Chrysalis. I guess ex-generals rated in the same way as ex-queens did. I was a little bit apprehensive about where my friends would be placed. Most wouldn't care, but Rarity and Rainbow Dash getting into an argument about who was above who in order of the procedure was something I cringed to think of. Fortunately, the staff hadn't been able to decide, so Jigsaw was to the left of Chrysalis, and all the rest of the places were simply marked Honorable Ponyville Guests. Rarity, who was the only one of my friends really conscious of such things, sat at Luna's left. The rest just plopped down in the spaces nearest to them when the first course was served, except for Spike, who sat next to me out of habit, I guess. Most of the talk during dinner was simply catching up, which was incredibly relaxing. I think I must have told the girls a dozen times how good it was to be with them again, but I still couldn't convey how thankful I was. There were no secrets from them, of course. When I told them that Luna and I were going to be keeping our continuing relationship quiet, they had varying reactions. Rarity was initially distressed, but then warmed to the idea.
A clandestine love affair is very romantic. But won't you ever be able to be seen in public together?
Pinkie Pie, who had gotten a fedora and a trench coat from someplace, leaned over the table with a carrot canapé stuck out of her corner of her mouth.
Na, sehr und cutie, see?
She rasped in a deep voice.
Keeping it on the down low, slipping it with Johnny Law, pulling the bull over.
Rarity pulled Pinkie's head down over her face and put another half-dozen canapés in her mouth.
I think we get the idea, dear. Someday, maybe,
I told her.
But for now, we will disguise ourselves if we want to go out together.
When the dessert course arrived, Spike's tongue dropped out of his mouth and unfurled halfway across the table. Pinkie had been true to her promise. On a large servient cart, the gem cake was enormous and glittered so brightly that it was hard to look at. In its shadow were an assortment of wonderful little pastries for those of us with less geologic tastes.
Manners, Spike,
I told him out of the corner of my mouth. He nodded in response, but I doubted he'd really hurt me. Or maybe he did. He didn't actually burrow into the cake. The party was just on the verge of breaking up when Chrysalis stalked over toward me. I instinctively readied a series of spells and then felt foolish for doing so. I did not, however, drop the matrix forms from my mind.
Thank you for the dinner, Twilight Sparkle,
she said.
You're welcome, Chrysalis,
I replied cautiously.
I've made a decision. Oh? Yes, I have decided to do without your help. I rather enjoy having you indebted to me. I will show you how true royalty behaves, and very possibly the next time you return to Canterlot, you will be in my shadow.
She then gave me a full, carnivorous grin and swept out of the hall. What was she going on about? Applejack asked.
I'm not certain,
I said.
But I doubt I'm going to like it when I find out for sure. She's just jealous,
a voice whispered in my ear. I turned to find Jigsaw standing there.
She's gotten used to being an important pony in town, and I think your dramatic return has got her a bit worried her star will wane.
I snorted out a laugh at the thought that suddenly popped into my mind. Sessorasha frowned.
Don't dismiss her so lightly, Twilight Sparkle. Even without her swarm, she is still formidable. If she really wants to overshadow me, she's going to have to save the kingdom several times over. That's a threat I can live with. She may not see it that way. Yeah, I suppose you're right, Sassy. But if she gets to be too much of a bother, I've got a magic mirror I can dump her into. If it was good enough for Starswell, it's good enough for me.
My remark was greeted by several puzzled looks, but I didn't bother to explain. We said our various goodbyes, and I excavated a semi-comatose Spike from the remains of his cake and passed him over to Fluttershy. He's going to be pretty cranky when he wakes up with a sour stomach and a sugar hangover. Are you sure you want to nurse him through it?
Oh yes, I don't mind at all. I have my traveling kit with me and I wouldn't want for you two to have to.
She paused and glanced between Luna and I.
I mean that it would be for you two to...
She trailed off and her face rapidly became a delightful shade of pink. I gave her a quick hug.
Thank you, Fluttershy. I'll come by to check on him tomorrow morning.
Luna and I left the hall and had just emerged into the palace forecourt when there came a hissing noise from beside the doorway.
Psst.
A lumpy shadow moved towards us from the shadows and resolved itself into Pinkie Pie, who had regained her trench coat and fedora.
You guys need some disguises?
Pinkie held out 2 pairs of glasses with heavy fake eyebrows and large pink noses attached. It was Luna who replied.
Thank you, Pinkie, but I think I can manage to keep us shielded from prying eyes.
She did something then, not overt magic, but I could feel the exercise of her power. A bat landed on her withers, then another, and another. I felt a tickle on my back and realized that the bats were landing on me too. I had a long moment's struggle not to freak out, and then held completely still as Luna and I were covered in bats that smoothly transformed into dark hooded cloaks. Pinkie dropped her glasses. I tried to keep my skin from shivering off me while I realized that odd gender roles weren't the only thing I was going to have to get used to if I was going to share my life with Luna. But I couldn't help it. My flesh still crawled. The cloaks did more than make us dark figures in the night. Some inherent magic kept us nearly invisible. We walked right past the steward as we crossed the terrace, which was brightly lit by the full moon, and he didn't so much as glance at us. When we reached the entrance to the Tower of the Moon, our cloaks fell apart and flew away. We had breakfast in bed, laughing and chatting and snuggling and just like normal ponies.
I shall have to arrange things so that I can visit you in Ponyville as often as possible. Perhaps you should acquire a handsome new neighbor who travels frequently?
I smiled.
Yes, and maybe you can hire a new hoofmaiden or servant. Maybe a messenger to explain long absences?
Yes,
She said.
something like that would suffice. We need not to be apart for more than a few days.
I stiffened slightly at her words and she felt it.
What's the matter, Twilight?
It's something I've been thinking about. No, don't worry. I don't want to be away from you for a second, but I think it may be necessary.
Luna frowned.
How so?
I sighed. I didn't want reality to intrude on our blissful time together, but my relentless brain wouldn't let go of the matter.
It's that I keep being surrounded by things lately, and I think it's because I don't know enough about...
'Tis not the mention I made of certain uses of weather vanes. 'Twas but a jest, I assure thee.
I laughed and smacked her gently on the shoulder with a wingtip.
No, I'm being serious here, though it really is about my innocence. I was shocked about the way Celestia controlled the realm, and I really shouldn't have been. If I'm going to be any sort of effective ruler, I have to learn more about how the world really works. And by that I mean the entire world, not just Equestria.
Ah,
Luna said, her smile fading a bit.
and that means more than studying from books, does it not?
Yes, I'm afraid so. I think I've got to see more of the world. To go and meet the people of other lands. That's going to take me away from you for long stretches from time to time.
Luna looked me in the face for a long while. Her smile had entirely vanished. Finally, she said,
There is more of thy concern in this matter than thou speakest, my love. Is't aught that thou fear to let fall upon mine ears?
Oh, stars and moon, I love it when you thou me.
Luna leaned over and bit me very gently on the nose.
There will be so fate of thous, if only thou wilt speak to me of thy troubles.
She was pretending to be playful, but I could tell she was really concerned. I sighed again.
I can't help but believe there has to be a better way to govern the kingdom. A way without deception. I want to find one. Maybe I can do that by seeing for myself what works best in other nations. And maybe, by piecing together all the best bits I can find, I can create a better system.
Luna was quiet for a time.
Will not my sister have something to say on the matter?
Oh, I'm sure of that. But if there's a better way, she will be open to it, won't she?
Another long pause.
Perhaps,
Was all Luna said. I leaned against her and said nothing for a while. I was just thinking that it was about time we got up and got started on the business of the day when Luna spoke again.
You still have the magic of the nightmare within you. Do you have plans for that too?
I'm not going to keep it within me,
I told her.
I don't think it's tainted, but there is an outside chance. And considering the way I got it...
I shuddered.
But it has to go somewhere, and I'm thinking of trying to bind it into an amulet or maybe a set of artifacts. It would come in handy in places where I couldn't use my own innate magic.
They might be fearsome weapons, might they not?
I frowned in puzzlement.
I don't want to make weapons. Luna, what do you think I'm planning?
She shrugged.
If you judge my sister's reign in the manner that she and I judged our mothers...
My jaw dropped.
What? No. I love her. You can't think I would do something like that.
Luna gave me an appraising look.
But if you happen upon a superior means of ruling and Celestia refuses to consider it?
No.
I said emphatically.
If it isn't good enough to be convincing in and of itself, then it probably isn't worth considering. I would never use force to.
As did I. Twice now, as I recall. Perhaps thrice or more if you account my part in the overthrow of Sombra or the casting down of Discord.
But they were evil.
Luna nodded slowly and then smiled.
True enough, my love. These are thoughts too dark for this bright morning.
She got out of bed and shook herself, shuffling her wings neatly against her sides.
Let us see to our friends and ailing dragon whelp. Matters of revolution can wait for another day.
Never going to happen, I promise.
She tossed her head.
Say as much in another century or so. Thy mind may be of a different cast by then.
I ran into a mental brick wall. Had she forgotten?
Luna, I'm not going to be around in another...
She interrupted me with a laugh and said,
Cast thy gaze upon thine own shoulder, my love.
She nodded to my right. I rolled slightly onto my left side and curved my neck around, but couldn't see anything remarkable. I looked back at Luna in puzzlement.
Thy scar is gone.
It was true. Even if it had been slowly healing all the while I had been trapped in the wheel of the earth, there should have been some sign of it, but my height was smooth and perfect.
I thinkest thou didst not merely shape the Red Queen's magic, but rather thou didst open thyself to it and guided it in channel within thyself. Do I have the right of it?
Yes, but...
Thou hast taken into thyself the fire of creation and did not perish. What changes it has wrought within thee. I can feel within thy aura.
A slow smile spread across her face and her eyes glittered with joy. She spun on dancing hoofs and trotted out of the bedchamber.
Come, my sweet innocent. Forever awaits us.
Luna?
I untangled myself from the bedsheets and rolled onto my hoofs.
Wait, you mean I'm actually...
I scurried through the door and caught a glimpse of Luna's sparkling tail as she rounded the corner at the far end of the hall. I slipped on the polished marble floor and had to flap awkwardly to avoid a faceplant. The sudden gust of air pulled an old tapestry depicting long-dead heroes from the wall and it fell across my neck and withers.
Luna, wait!
I shook off the dusty old thing and broke into a gallop towards eternity. Author's note. I owe a debt of thanks to academic Pony and Cetus that would dwarf an Ursa Major. This would have been a much poorer story without their help.
Comment time! So, as always, first and foremost, I will remind you that you can support me via my Patreon. The link is in the description. Every dollar is needed, appreciated, and I would be very thankful. So now let's get back to my comments, actually, because that's why it's called comment time, is it not? So, let me begin with what I think about this chapter. Well, first of all, I must say, what the hell is going on here? So Luna and Twilight will keep their relation secret. So basically, everything I said in my last comment time is basically moot because they agree with Celestia. Okay, so go for it, you two. Then, yeah, there's a small matter of Twilight not being physically attracted to Luna, but Luna being a shapeshifter. That could lead to some very, 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 very interesting situations if you seriously consider it. But also we see that Twilight plans to go and see the world. She wants to travel to maybe find another way of governing Equestria. And I seriously don't know if she will not rebel one day or, well, have a revolution of her own, because, quite frankly, there is a follow-up story to this, which is called The Twilight Enigma, and the author already gave me permission to read it, So, yeah. So, that will come sometime in the future, because it's not finished writing yet. He's not finished writing it yet, so, yeah. Don't know what will come in that yet, because I haven't read a single chapter of that yet. Even though I really want to, but I don't have the time. So, what can I say? What else is here? Yeah, Twilight apparently, because she meddled with the magic of the Red Queen, is now fucking immortal. Wow! So, this is another concern laid to rest, but it brings another 5 concerns to mind. Several more if I take her parents into account, because now that she's immortal, she will effectively outlive her parents, her friends, well, Spike maybe... oh, yes, she will outlive Spike, because even though dragons are very long-lived, they have a finite lifespan. So basically, she will outlive everyone she loves, except Luna and Celestia. So we have now 3 immortal Alicorn princesses and 1 mortal Alicorn princess. Basically that 1 mortal Alicorn princess being Cadence. Wow! Cool. Yeah. There's only 1 chapter left to go in the story, which is the epilogue. And I kinda like how the story concluded here at the end. There will be another little bit more in the epilogue, which will come out next week. Or for my Patreons, just check the Patreon feed. Boah, I love this story. Seriously, I do. This and the Celestia Code, those are awesome stories. If you haven't listened to the Celestia Code yet, shame on you, because it's a prequel to this one. We will see each other in the epilogue, and sincerely yours, VisualPony.